Just want to welcome you all. As many of you know, we started doing this series digitally once COVID happened. As many of you know, brands really struggle to find the right agencies, and often agencies aren't that amazing at finding the right clients, like right brands. And so we're marketing matchmakers connecting the two. As mentioned, today's topic is about the client agency relationship, and this is something that we live and breathe. We have been thinking about this for years and years and years and talking about it for years and years and years. And we do an annual marketing relationship survey that this year got published in Ad Age, where they posted the big headline was 1 in 3 brands will change agencies in the next 6 months. Today, we'll start with what agencies wish clients knew, and then we'll jump to what clients wish agencies knew. A couple of things that agencies wish clients knew. They wish that clients would be patient and answer questions about their business. They wish that the client would go deep in terms of giving the agencies as much information about their business and their needs as possible. They often lean on agencies to educate them and for their expertise. I mean, the reason that a client typically hires an agency is because they are missing either a capability, they don't have the knowledge or skill to do something specific that they need help with, or capacity. They just don't have enough arms and legs to do all of the challenges that they're trying to accomplish. So they definitely lean on their agencies to educate them and train them, or also to get things done that they maybe don't have the expertise in-house to do. Providing as much critical information up front. We've had a lot of conversation here about budgets. How transparent should a client be about their budgets with the agency? And the reality is, I think agencies often feel that the more transparent clients can be and the more information they can provide up front just allows them to deliver better services as an output. And then understanding bandwidth. So the reality is that agencies, try to have every person at the agency as billable as possible and as utilized as possible. And so as clients come with new needs and opportunities, often the agencies have to figure out how to scale to meet those challenges. And then the last thing is just treating the agency team with mutual respect. We've definitely hear horror stories where clients treat an agency like a vendor and don't really treat them as a trusted partner. And so mutual respect and trust are key to any relationship, but particularly the agency-client relationship. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I've got a whole right side of the slide that's what clients wish agencies knew. But I'm curious to get any feedback from either somebody on the agency side that maybe there were several points we missed, or if there are thoughts from people on the client side of other things that they have done to be better partners to their agencies.
I was agency side for more decades than I care to admit, and I owned an agency for 15 years, and now I've been client side for 4 years, so I feel like I've seen both sides. I think this slide nails it. I mean, I remember when I was agency side being very frustrated that clients would forget to tell me what was going on in their business or with their market or with a competitor or a new product coming out or something, and I would be blindsided and surprised. So that's sort of the crucial information up front, and leaning on the agency for their expertise. Sometimes they would hire somebody else to do something that we had the capability of doing, and that was also my fault for not making sure they knew all of our capabilities. But that was frustrating. And then the mutual respect thing, of course, is huge. I just always recall a time, and this was in the middle of the Great Recession, where we had lost clients. We needed every bit of revenue, but I had a large client on a conference call with one of my people, basically question her expertise and not directly call her a liar, but sort of call her a liar. And and I knew what she was saying was true. This person just didn't understand what they were talking about, but thought they did. And she was very demoralized, and I immediately fired the client. And even though I didn't know how I was going to replace that revenue, and even though we were in the middle of the Great Recession, I always found that a valuable team member is much more important than a client. And it was absolutely the right thing to do.
So how has that changed what your approach is now that you're on the client side? And, do you understand some of those challenges that you maybe didn't understand 4 years ago?
100%. Well, I guess I feel like I'm a really good client now because I understand what they're going through, and I try and treat everybody on the agency side the way that I wanted to be treated, and I'm respectful of time frames. I will never call an agency at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon and insist that I have something by Monday morning. And I've had that happen to me a lot when I was agency side. So I do think it's made me a better client. At least I try to be.
Great. Does anybody on the agency side want to chime in? Are there other things we didn't include on the list, or are there other things that that you wish the client would know?
Yeah, can I throw in
one? Okay.
Yeah, I hear Moira. I hear Moira from Moto.
Yeah, just it's actually it dovetails on what Stacy just brought up, and that is that we're all continuing to live in a changing dynamic business situation. And one of the things that's very interesting to me, 20 years ago, agencies did have people that worked 50 and 60 hours a week, and night and day and weekend and all of that. But especially now, as we're all dealing with tight talent, we can't do that anymore. So not only are the demands difficult and the juggling, but the dynamics that an agency is experiencing with trying to recruit talent and retain talent that also wants more flexibility, that sort of mutual respect also extends to some work-life balance and some reality. So I'm finding that interesting as well. It's not just the dynamic of we'd like a little more time. It's we're trying to be not the whip end of everything that perhaps for decades we have been in the ecosystem.
And if I could jump in, this is Amanda from Setup. It's Moira, what you're saying is also reminding me of the importance of clients understanding the difference of retainer contracts versus project. And, the importance of having a retainer if you have an expectation of resources being available, at any given time or at all times, versus coming back in, just showing up with another project and expecting magic to happen immediately is not realistic, and even more so maybe now than previously. But just kind of that understanding of how the agency is set up and how they can best service you. And if you have expectations in that way, then to get on retainer so that you have those expectations met as you can.
Lance, I see you unmuted. Do you have addition
Yeah,
to that?
I do. I think I would add one thing, which is trust, which this world is changing dramatically. Most clients are doing quite a bit of in-housing, and usually that's like a taboo topic to talk about, right? And it's like not a transparent thing, and it's like there's like a tension with a client and agency when that dynamic is happening, and the agency's kind of doesn't know exactly what's going on, but I find that if you have open conversations and are much more transparent about that, about what you're trying to build internally and what you're looking for the agency to build on top of, right? That they do want to look at an agency. I think that's a really healthy conversation, and one that it's usually hidden off to the side, and agencies aren't sure how they can help, and they're probably and that's probably from a client side standpoint a little bit oh, that I don't really need that, and maybe this isn't the right thing because the agency doesn't have enough context to know where to help, right? So I think that's a something that's changed quite a bit with insourcing and where, you know, everyone's doing some sort of transformation right now, and figuring out what they're going to, you know, build, buy, and outsource. So I think that it all stems back to trust and having open, honest, transparent conversations.
100%. So let's do one more comment on what agencies wish clients knew, and then I'm going to jump over to what clients wish their agency partners would know as well.
I have one quick thought if nobody else has something. So I think sometimes clients, especially sort of on smaller projects where you don't have the time to build a really deep relationship with the agency and really get to know each other, I think underestimate that also from the client side, what you put in the relationship is what you get out, right? So it's a little bit also like in every relationship, if you make yourself maybe a little bit vulnerable, it builds that trust that Lance was talking about. Because ultimately, I think any agency is rooting for the client. If you get a chance and you get treated with respect and you get to know what the bigger picture is about, people will put in even more effort. But you got to be given a chance to do that. And I think sometimes you need to help the client to channel that in maybe direct and indirect ways. I'll give you sort of one example just to share what I think could be a best practice maybe for others. We have a pretty young workforce that skews female. And when you work with a client, you sometimes have this imbalance of power where, you know, the client obviously holds a lot more power. And while things are getting better, sometimes people overstep or like leverage that power a little bit too much. We developed sort of what we call a partnership agreement, where you not only sign a scope of work, but you also sign sort of a piece of paper that lays out a sort of a code of conduct. Here is how we're gonna work together, which sort of lays some ground rules. And if then somebody oversteps, you can use this sort of, if you use a soccer analogy, as a yellow card, where you can be like, hey, Joe, this what you just said was really not like in the spirit of sort of our partnership agreement, and so on. And without anybody sort of losing face, you can like put people back on a better track.
I went and joined a breakout room that happened to have 2 agency folks and 1 client in the room. And we had a really interesting discussion about the power dynamic and how it changes when you move from client agency side to client side. People parse their words more carefully to you. And how do you get unvarnished feedback that you really want from your agency partner when at the end of the day you're signing their checks? So I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that really quickly, and if anybody had any other discussions, or even anybody that was in the room I was in want to chime in on that.
I can chime in on the unvarnished. If you're asking from the agency side, how does the client get the direct feedback they need from the agency? Is that the question?
Well, the feedback we heard was from a client who expressed that now she's on the client side and she doesn't feel like she understands why, but she wants to hear what the agency really thinks and what they really want from the client, but they're not always, they sometimes hold back a lot because the power dynamic.
Yeah, so I can handle that one. I think you really have to have these conversations openly when you're selecting your agency. So one of the conversations that we have with clients is we aren't vendors and we're not yes men, right? And what that means is we give you opinions when we have them. We're going to be vulnerable and real with you. And we expect that that's a mutual thing. And so I think some of it is cultural, right? You have to be with people that believe it's better for everybody if everybody's being honest. And so I do think, some of that is, it's not continuous in every organization we work with. There are people that like to keep things close to the vest and don't want to be open. But I think by and large, if you can select each other for candor and work to make it safe for that candor to happen, that's what long-term relationships come from. So.
Anyone else want one more thought? And then I'm going to jump into the right side of what clients wish agencies knew.
Just
Okay.
add that,
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
yeah, I was just going to add that, I think that everything Moira says is true. And I think that once you get into the relationship, you kind of have to work on that connection, right? And I think that once you demonstrate that you have each other's best interests at heart, that that kind of, authentic, open communication comes a lot more naturally. And, and I think that we all have had, and I've only ever been on the agency side, but, I think that I've often had that one client contact amongst a team who is, the one who kind of sidebars you and is coaches you on the side because they recognize that you're also the key to their success. And I think if you can have that mutual coaching, it certainly sets both parties up for success.
Absolutely. Okay,
Hi,
I love it.
Hi,
Oh,
can
go
I just
ahead.
chime in? Hi, May Mitchell.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm actually on the client side. I'm in cybersecurity. I spent most of my career in that category, but I would say we all got to talk the same language, right? Whether it's marketing and sales talking or marketing and an agency, we got to talk the same language. And the best way to talk that same language, quite frankly, is having a core set of KPIs, and so it's making sure that the client agency are part of the planning process. Here are the things that, we're going to measure ourselves. This is what success looks like. We're going to measure ourselves every single quarter and set up those KPIs, and we measure ourselves that way, because if you don't have KPIs or goals, you know how these things, it's like, I thought we were doing this, it happens all the time, and also once you have those KPIs, then from a client side, we'll share with our executives so everyone sees it and it sets the right expectations, and I share it every single week when I speak on our ELT calls and also on the board calls. I like, hey, here are the things we agreed that we're going to track. Here's the progress that we're making.
Love it. I love it. Yeah. I mean, I think nothing gets people on the same page than shared goals. And that's what I think you're saying, May, is, if we can align the agency on the same goals that the client is shooting for, then it also makes for, I think, a deeper and stronger relationship because we're working together against those goals. Okay, I'm gonna keep it moving because I want to think about the other side of the equation. So what clients wish agencies knew. And by the way, these were gathered from lots of conversations over lots of years, and but we're definitely open to additional points here. So act as a strategic partner. I wish that the agency would act as a strategic partner. Help me navigate the bureaucratic red tape. So I've heard this over and over again from clients that say, gosh, my agency just doesn't understand that we can't just, things move really fast within the agency world and you can get things approved really quickly and you can be moving from one thing to the next thing immediately, but things move slower sometimes within particularly larger organizations. So how do you balance the navigating, the lobbying the right people to get the thing accomplished that you want to accomplish? Act as an extension of their team. So we talked a little bit about trust and relationship, and that's, we said that a lot of times the reasons that a client chooses an agency is because they can become an extension of the team and give additional capacity. Understand that not all ideas can be executed. So I think it is part of the agency's job to push the client and push the boundaries and come with creative ideas and big ideas, but then the clients want agencies to really know that there is there are some parameters that they just can't cross. And then research everything to understand the brand's business before asking. So there's nothing worse on the client side than the agency showing ignorance, I should say. I mean, I moderated a session many years ago where we had some people from the agency side and people on the client side, and the client said, you wouldn't believe how many agencies have pitched us and gotten our logo wrong. I mean, that's tough, right? You can't do that. But I would say this last point, research everything and understand the brand's business before asking the question. In the old days, we used to ask thousands of questions. Now we have resources like the internet that can help us answer many of those questions up front. So I want to open it up to discussion. Anything else? Any clients want to chime in about things we missed that irk you, get under your skin, that you wish the agency folks knew?
Having been
Thad unmuted. He just started at Calendly pretty recently.
Yes, two weeks fresh in. I would just reiterate the red tape aspect. Having started my career over on the agency side and then moved to the client side, the amount of bureaucracy can just be staggering sometimes. I know agency side, we could quickly internally approve something, say within the matter of days, if not hours. On the agency side, sometimes even a simple approval can take weeks to get through, because you may have factors of not only just your own marketing team, all the way up to the C-suite and whoever wants to be involved there. It just adds endless layers and endless time to the cycle.
I can
Absolutely.
jump into that, and Amanda's probably going to giggle at me just a little bit. I am new to the Coca-Cola company, 4 weeks in, and I can absolutely echo what you're saying. I think just from my perspective, I never understood on the agency side exactly how much bureaucracy was going on the client side. So I think those questions are helpful to ask up front now. You know, who are your stakeholders? Because at the same time that you're an agency, I'm also sort of an agency. I have not only a consumer, but also a boss and a CMO and a lot of people that have a lot of opinions that I'm trying to manage through as well. So yeah, keeping that in mind and maybe knowing that up front will help manage expectations a little bit more, especially around timelines.
Yeah.
I would add one piece to Jacqueline. Your comment is not just who are your stakeholders, but what are their hot buttons? You know, what are their triggers? Are there things that we should, as an agency, be aware of to navigate to make sure that we, you know, fulfill their needs?
And,
Yeah.
and in a scenario with like Thad and Jacqueline, who are new at a client side, being able to partner with the agencies who have been around that company for a while and get their insights and understand what they know about how to get projects pushed through can be really helpful. And maybe clients don't always think to ask the agency. A lot of times agencies have been embedded with those clients for years and they really understand how to navigate. So that's also, I think, just a positive thing that can come out of that, whether you're coming from another brand or just coming from the agency side to a brand. When you're new at a brand, those agency folks that have been around can really be helpful.
Yeah. One of the things, hi, it's May Mitchell again. One of the things that when I think about the ideal partner or agency, I really like them to be ahead of us, right? I don't want them to be sitting at the table and executing everything. In other words, I don't want them to be drinking our Kool-Aid all the time. You know, I look at agencies like you have a pulse into the marketplace. You're on top of the news. You're on top of our competitors. You foresee something. Hey, did you guys check out this thing? Or have you thought about this? I really want them to be proactive and constantly push us all the time. You know, and whether or not the answer is no, I'm sorry, we can't do that right now. But I like those ideas to constantly come in.
Love it. Anybody want to give one last comment before we move you to the next breakout room?
One thing, which is back to this idea of honesty and trust, and that I mentioned before, but for the flip side, 'cause I've done both sides, is agencies, generally try to sell that they can do everything. And the reality is they all have strengths and weaknesses. And what they don't realize is that they, by trying to, say that you can do something that you're not really set up to do, you end up hurting yourself and the relationship quite a bit. So again, back to this open and honest dialogue, just being able to be clear with what you can deliver, because in the end, you're setting, your client up for failure if you don't deliver, and that makes them look pretty bad. And in the process, you kind of waste a lot of time. So I always try to when I'm on the client side, I try to figure out, all right, how do we actually get to the core of what each agency is good at and use them for that versus be the training wheels to, add more services, if you will.
Yeah. So that's part of why setup, when we work with a new agency, we put them through a pretty rigorous agency assessment process to really understand what they do really well and what they don't do so well, so that we never matching them with brands for something that they're not really good at, because we found that we need that trust that the client will then come back again and again if they need more agency support. Both groups want the other to be more strategic. So there's something missing. And I posed the question, is part of the missing piece transparency, where maybe the client isn't bringing the agency into the fold and opening the kimono and showing them all of the budget and the strategy and the KPIs and those things, so that the agencies can be a more strategic partner? Is it that the agencies aren't asking the right questions and aren't really challenging enough and are too much of, little too much of an order taker? And then we've heard a lot about just communication and communication style. So I'm going to build to the next slide here, which we all know this. Communication, understanding the person, understanding the business, viewing each other as partners are all key. But does anybody want to give one or two last thoughts on the agency-client relationship?
Hey, all, this
Did
is
we
Josh.
solved it all? Hey, Josh, we've almost solved it. So yours might be the missing comment that helps
Yeah.
us.
Okay. So this is the missing comment. At the end of the day, we're all humans, right? Clients, agencies, we're all humans. Treat each other like humans, have real dialogue, have real conversations, and you'll get to the finish line together. Nailed it. Boom.
Boom. Is that a mic drop?
I don't have a mic here, so that I drop it.
Perfect. All right. So thank you. We're going to send a survey, and we'll also be sending a recap of the event. So now that we've solved this challenge completely, we can just move on to some other topic completely. But you'll get a survey. Also, you'll get a link so that you can register for the October 19th, our next one.
21st.
October 21st. So anyway, thank you all for coming today. I heard some really interesting conversation, and we'll try to capture what we heard in our recap as well. But thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. It's good.
Thanks, guys.